Is weird, odd, strange, or just plain bizarre is really your cup of tea? Then, the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast will give you that fix. Can't believe it? Well, listen for yourself as we deliver the strangest news you definitely won't find on CNN or Fox. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Colleen, and let's just get into some weird stuff. So, I wanted to talk today. I was watching some TV yesterday, and I thought, you know what I'd like to talk today about? Strange cults. So, I was watching a show about cults and other things, murderers and whatnot, and, the cult thing really got me going, and there's one specific one that I had never heard of, and it was probably just one of the strangest things I have ever heard of. So, let's talk about this cult first, and then we'll get into some more really strange cults and go from there. So, let's start with Heaven's Gate. This is the one that started this whole thought process. So, Heaven's Gate was run by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles. Now, Marshall was the son of a pastor and wanted to do that his whole life and then just didn't. People assumed that he was homosexual, and that was kind of the thing that drew him from the faith itself. But then he met Bonnie Nettles, not a partner, platonic friend. And him and Bonnie Nettles, Bonnie Nettles had some weird ideas, and she was telling him all these weird things, and so this started out as a almost Christian Catholic based into weird UFO stuff. Okay, let me explain. So they started Heaven's Gate in 1970, and Heaven's Gate is basically about aliens, spaceships, and the recycling of Earth. So it's, like I said, it started out semi-Christian with aliens thrown in there, and changed when Nettles died in 1987. So, with Nettles dying, Applewhite went crazy. He went nuts, and he took it to, extremes times 10. Now, there are actually videos of this out there that you can see, because this started in an internet era, and they had a website, and they were posting videos on their website and sending out videos and whatnot. It's very strange. One of the weirdest things you'll see. And with those videos, they actually used clips from Star Trek, which is real strange. Even when Nettles was alive, they used clips from Star Trek, and they said, they quoted Star Trek, which is just real weird. But anyway, let's move on. With Nettles dying in 1987... Applewhite started to claim that there's a spacecraft following the Hale-Bopp comet and would carry the members to the next level of existence. So he's saying that there's this spaceship and we need to get there. Okay, this is where it gets a little gross. So he also told his followers, he was always telling his followers since the beginning that sex was bad and all, that's a number one no-no. That's something you don't do. You don't have sex. You don't give in to these urges. This is the ultimate sin type thing. And this is a little gross. Hold on to your seat. So, Applewhite, who... they started changing their names, and he actually changed his name 3 times. So it's a little hard to figure out which one he was at this time. But he castrated himself and told his followers to follow suit. And they did. in this thing I was watching, in this documentary that I was watching that was talking about this, they were, there's a clip of a guy who did it after Applegate, and he's like, it's the best decision I've ever made in my life. This is the best thing I've ever done in my life. And yeah, no, it's really uncomfortable. They also had really weird haircuts and, like, outfits that they wore. But anyway, so this is where it gets a little sad. Besides the fact that Applegate was just nuts and all of this was going on, and people knew that this was ridiculous. People knew that Applewhite was nuts and everything he's saying was wrong, but he did have followers. He had a lot of followers until he was down to about 38 followers because he was trying to push suicide. After Nettles died, he told everybody that she was, like, your body is basically a vessel. Your body is the vessel, and when you die, it's like you're taken up to the mothership. So if you die, it's your body that dies and not you, and you go to the mothership. So that's what he said that happened to Nettles. He said, oh, Nettles is not here, but she's in a better place. And he really kind of focused on people who hated people who hated their life on Earth and, you know, just their life in general. And oh man, it's sad, but him and his 38 followers made a bunch of videos trying to push this idea of suicide so that you can leave your body and go to, you know, the mothership or the spacecraft or what have you. Now you can actually go, like, watch these videos, which is kind of, it's a little disturbing, but it really shows kind of what was going on within this cult and that it's real strange. Maybe I'll post them on the Twitter at GSMC_weird news, and also on the Facebook, GSMC weird news. But so they actually made a video too towards the end of what they wanted to say to people about, like, dying and their choice and why they've made this choice and why they think it's the best option. So they died by suicide, unfortunately, by taking phenobarbital. Sorry, pronunciation is not my thing, but phenobarbital mixed with applesauce. Apparently it was over, like, a longer period of time, so it wasn't just that. And I think it was also mixed in a drink as well. But they all took that, and they all wore the same uniform and Nike shoes, and had exactly $5.75 in their pockets when they died. Now, I don't know, it's really strange. I saw the photos, like the after photos of what they were all laying in bed. It was really weird. Don't go look it up. I mean, if you want to go look it up at your own discretion, but it's strange. But apparently their website actually still exists. This blows my mind. Now, the fact that it exists isn't what still exists. Excuse me, good God. But the fact that it still exists isn't what blows my mind. What blows my mind is the fact that it's still running, like it's maintained. So this website still exists and is maintained by 2 followers. Now, I don't know how many people out there are actually still following Heaven's Gate and all this garble, but it's the website's still up. I have not visited it. I just don't want to. I don't know. This was a terrible thing that happened. Absolutely, absolutely terrible. And this guy was insane. Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles were both crazy, and this is probably one of the weirdest things, and definitely the one cult I really wanted to talk about, at least in the beginning of this, and that really started this whole, I don't know, this whole shebang for me, because it's something I've never heard of. Everybody's heard of the Manson family and whatnot, but this one I had never heard of before, and it just blew my mind that he had followers basically saying, oh, they're good, like, we need to do the recycling of Earth and everybody needs to die and go off into the spaceship. I don't know. It's just so crazy to me. But with that, I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about some strange cults that I've found.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Hello, and welcome back to the GSMC Weird News Podcast. Now, before the break, we were talking strange cults, unusual, weird cults, and we were talking about Heaven's Gate. Now, let's move on over to Japan. So, there was a Japan-based cult called Ho no Hana Sanpogyo? Pronunciation. I'm not good at it. Sorry. But this started in 1987, which is kind of ridiculous because the other one also started in 1987. What's going on, 1987? Were you okay? I'm kind of worried about you. But anyway, there was a man named Hogen Fukunaga who claimed to be the reincarnation of both Buddha and Jesus Christ. So this guy says he's Buddha and Jesus. Okay, cool. So he would do this thing where he would read people's feet, like reading your palm. He said he could diagnose your problems by reading your feet. Not only that, is to have your foot read, you were charged $900. I don't know what that is in yen. But it was basically $900 for a foot reading. So this guy, let's talk a little bit about Hogan, Mr. Hogan here. I'm not going to try and do his last name every time. But he apparently had a bunch of debt and then had this spiritual awakening and started saying that he was the reincarnation of both Buddha and Jesus Christ. So he charges these $900 for these foot readings. He also had people attend seminars, which cost 2.25 million yen, or 14.5 million yen donated to the church. Yeah. So, he would, I don't know, that's so ridiculous. All this money, by the way, was not going towards his church. All this money was going towards him and his wife. It was saying that his wife spent like something around $5,000 to $7,000 a month or something just on whatever. And he wore expensive suits and this and that. As this started to grow and he started to get all this money from these followers that he had. He also falsely claimed that he could cure diseases, that like they could cure diseases if they went to his training seminar, which also costed money. On top of the fact that he's basically charging people for these foot readings and these seminars and these classes to cure your diseases, he also was selling ornaments and pricey scrolls and all sorts of stuff like that were supposed to ward off illness. Oh no, ward off evil, cure illness, and also break family curses. You got a family curse? Buy this ornament. It'll help. I don't know. This guy just seems like a total crackpot. He started this all because he was in debt, and then becomes a multi-millionaire by the end of it. This guy's straight a multi-millionaire with money he just made off of making people believe that he was the reincarnation of Buddha and Jesus Christ. This just, oh, what? Who is this guy? For real, like, it's ridiculous. So, let's talk about what happened to him. So he was actually sentenced to 12 years for taking about 150 million yen from his followers in the name of religious training. So I don't know if that's just the religious training or if that's like the combination of everything. I couldn't really find much on that. But he also had 15 senior cult members that were charged with mass fraud. Now, out of these 15 senior cult members, 9 of them were given verdicts and convicted. So I don't know if the others were also convicted or if it was just the 9 of them that were convicted. What? This guy, I read this and I was like, oh my gosh. The picture of this guy too, I'll have to post it on the Twitter, GSMC _weird news. But I have to post this photo on the Twitter or something on the Facebook because he just looks like he's just sitting on a throne kind of looking thing. Like, it's ridiculous. People were just giving this guy money because they're like, you can tell me what the ailment is, and then you can show me how to fix it. And it was, it's ridiculous. These poor people. But also, like, I get it when it comes to cults. A lot of times people are very easily talked into one thing or another. And that's not your fault. It's not. It's just terrible. Like, it sucks. There are many people who have fallen under these spells of cults, or what you want to call it, under the persuasion of cults. And it's not their fault, because these people are just so good at talking their way through things. And I assume this guy was too. I couldn't find much about his wife, but I do know that she did divorce him at the end of this. Wonder why. But, man, she was spending a lot of this money too. Let's talk about the fact that he still has possible charges. So apparently he still faces charges of manslaughter in the death of 4 recruits who died during rigorous intonation rites at Mount Fuji. So basically, 4 people died that were recruits of his doing some of whatever the training or the rites or whatever it was, doing this. The 4 people died and he has not been charged for them. But he can still be charged with manslaughter, which I honestly think he very well should be. And I also think that 12 years is kind of not a lot of sentence. Like, it's a very small sentence. I don't know. It just seems ridiculous that they only gave him 12 years for basically scamming millions and millions and millions of dollars off of people. And also just telling people he was telling people that they were sick when they weren't sick, and he was telling people that were sick that he could fix the sick, or that they weren't because he miraculously saved them or whatnot. Oh man, these poor people. And he's out there, doing that, and he gets 12 years? That's something I don't understand, is 12 years. But apparently Japan doesn't have the right resources to be able to deal with a cult like America would. So that also kind of throws this into the, issue that they're just not prepared for a cult. And he came out of nowhere and this happened. I don't know. This guy's ridiculous. Before I go on about Mr. Hogan here, we will take a quick break and talk about some more weird cults.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back to the GSMC Weird News Podcast. Now, before the break, we were talking about some unusual, weird, and just strange altogether cults. Now, I want to move into some cults that are actually still active to this day, which kind of blows my mind. Let's move on to Florida. Right on to Florida. This is these are, I picked a bad topic because they are so hard to pronounce all these names. Okay, the Kashi Ashram in Florida started in 1976 when a woman who calls herself Ma Jaya Sati Bhagavati when she believed that she was receiving visions from Jesus and several Hindu deities. Now, this whole cult in and of itself tries to promote compassion and understanding while encouraging a community-driven lifestyle. Now, that doesn't sound too bad, right? Well, you're wrong. So, the former members actually criticize, we're going to call her Ma, criticize Ma and the whole cult, or I guess religion, whatever, we're going to call it cult, and the whole cult as a whole for brainwashing their members into believing that Ma was God. So, not just that she was a prophet and figuring out, I received this from Jesus and these from these Hindu deities, but that she was actually God. And then on top of that, that Ma said that you should give yourself and your children through informal adoption to her for training. I don't know. This seems like a lot. This seems kind of like your basic cult, but the thing that blows my mind is that it's still going on to this day. Now, Ma actually died in 2003, but it's still going. The compound is still there, and they're still preaching her teachings or what have you, and it's still going on, and I think that is absolutely ridiculous. There's a comedy thing on the show Documentary Now that's I think it's really kind of making fun of maybe this one in specific, but it's making fun of cults in general, and this made me really think of that one in specific. If I can find a clip from it or something, I'll post it on the Twitter or the Facebook at GSMC_Weird News. Now, let's move on to another one that is actually still going as of today, and that's Realism. Now, this is global, but this started in France in 1976. Hey, that's the same year. What's going on? 1976, are you feeling okay? But anyway, they believe that extraterrestrials genetically engineered humanity thousands of years ago and and have been guiding us through history through their representatives that are on Earth who take form of major religious figures like Buddha and Jesus. What? They currently believe that the leaders of their cult are modern-day versions of past real visitors, so like past alien visitors, who have come to teach them how to be peaceful so that these aliens can come back to Earth. What? Like, the fact that this is still going on blows my mind. This takes me back to the one we talked about in the beginning of this podcast. And it blows my mind that there are so many people out here that it looks massive. I've seen photos of groups of them and whatnot, and it looks like a massive thing. And this is global. People think that extraterrestrials genetically engineered humanity thousands of years ago and have been guiding us through history with their representatives that are on Earth. And that they're, like, I don't know, they're trying to bring them back. But the one thing that I do not mind about this cult is it seems to be that they're just trying to kind of preach, besides their nutso stuff about aliens, they're trying to preach like positivity in a way. They're trying to be peaceful enough that their alien beings will come back, that kind of thing. So that's kind of cute. I mean, I'm not going to go and join the Raelism or Raelism cult now, but I really think that this is one of those ones that it seems more on the compassion side, unlike our Kashi ashram one. It just seems like it's more peaceful than most of the cults that I've been talking about and are going to continue to talk about on this podcast. I don't know. I want to know what you guys think. Tweet me at GSMC_weird news what you think about this, or if you know anybody that's in a cult. Like, I'd like to know if you're in a cult. We will send help. Seriously. I don't know. It's like, honestly, to each their own. I'm not bashing any religion. I'm not bashing any sort of, anything that you're into. To each your own. I just want to talk about some ones that I find particularly odd and kind of out there to me. Especially ones from the past that are out there and, they've done a lot of wrong. People who have created these cults are just looking for some way of power for this and that. And it's wrong. And they're just kind of using people to get that power that they want, that kind of, I don't know, pat on the back that they're better than anybody else. I'm not gonna bash anything that you are into. That's the last thing I want to do on here. I don't care what religion you are or anything you are. That's all on you. I don't care what you believe. I just want to say that these are like some of the odder things that I found that are, these ones are happening now still, which is mind-blowing to me. But the ones I talked about before, they're no longer a thing. It's just, I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think cults are fascinating. The fact that somebody can take just a little bit of something and make it so large and make it such a huge thing that people are just, so fascinated. And they're like, well, maybe I want to be a part of that. Maybe I want to, maybe I want to do that. Maybe they will accept me. That's a big thing with this is acceptance. Is a lot of cult leaders go and they take this, specific group of people that are all feeling the same kind of way. Like, I'm looking for a friend, I'm looking for this, I'm feeling a little lonely, I'm feeling a little out there. As in the case of the first one we talked about, feeling a little, suicidal, if, you're Heaven's Gate, but that kind of thing. They take those people in those specific groups that are feeling one way or another, and they really say, I understand you, I feel you, I can help you. And that can be dangerous in and of itself, but also, it's just fascinating to see that this is what happens, and this is what creates a cult. And then there's so many people out here. There's a lot of people out here believing that extraterrestrials and Jesus are somehow, intertwined. I don't understand that, but to each their own, like I said. Now, before I keep rambling, we're going to take a quick break, and I'm going to come back and tell you some more weird and unusual cults.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the GSMC Weird News Podcast. Now, before the break, we were talking about strange, unusual, and weird cults. Now, right before the break, we were talking about cults that are actually still active in one way or another to this day. Now, I want to talk about something that kind of borders the line between cult and just horrible. Fair warning, this is a lot. So I just want to put it out there. This is a little bit much. It's kind of gruesome, and just want to put that out there. So let's talk about the Vampire King. Now, I read about this while doing research for this podcast and just mind blown that this was a thing, and I'd never heard of it before. So this happened in 2004, at least the end of this was 2004. There was a man named Marcus Wesson, 57 years old at the time, and he believed that Jesus was a vampire. And he kind of followed a religion of Christianity and vampirism. I'm not sure. But he also thought the end times would be upon them. And he had followers, but also a lot of his followers were his children and grandchildren. Now, this was very incestuous. It's kind of hard to follow when it comes to that because there were followers, but then followers were also family members because it's a little difficult. So, first off, he would control them by manipulation and physical abuse. He kept his daughters and sons, I'm using air quotes, you can't see them, but I am. His daughters and sons separate, for he was worried that they would grow romantic relationships with one another. Now, he did marry his daughters a long time ago, and that was the first time he married his daughter, like his actual daughter. Then, as it kept going, his daughters to him were his future wives. So he just kept marrying his daughters, I think starting with his actual daughter. Like, it's really messed up. And he would come about to have fathered 18 children through different women, about 5 of whom were young girls. Now, this is just, this is a lot. But I had to throw this in here because I'm mind blown that I had never heard of this guy before. This is so horrific, and I've never heard of it. Just what? Anyway, he wanted to move all the members to Washington, and when he said that, some of them rebelled, being members that were not family and family. They rebelled against him and actually called the police. The police showed up, and a man runs out covered in blood. That's him. And then it goes downhill from there. He ends up killing 9 of them. When he found out the police were called, and when they arrived, 9 of them were dead. But at least the police were able to get him. Like, this is the big thing, is the police were able to get him, and he was found guilty on 9 counts of murder and several counts of sexual assault. And he's currently on death row. Now, this is a lot to unpack. Now, I wanted to throw him in here because he's not your traditional cult when you're thinking like the Manson family or some of the ones we talked about earlier where it's a large group of people from all over kind of worshiping one person, but it does technically fall into the cult category, I guess you would say, because he was basically just controlling these people and having these people believe that, Christianity and vampirism was a thing and Jesus was a vampire and the end times were coming and all this. And man, I just feel so bad. I feel so bad for anybody who was involved with this, and I feel so bad for all of the children, including the ones that did not make it. And it was a lot of young children because it was incestuous, so they were constantly having children with him. At least the wives or daughters, as he called them, were constantly having children with him, and it just became this big thing. And I do call that a cult, because a lot of cults are that kind of way. They're the way that I actually skipped over a lot of cults in this podcast because they are very well known, and a lot of them are, you've got the one man leading the group, and he takes all the women as his wives and wants to father children with all the women, and that's why it falls within the cult line category. I keep saying line, but I mean category every time. But I looked over a lot of those and did not put a lot of those in here because there were so many that were the same. The only reason that I'm putting the Vampire King in here is because it's horrific just like the rest of him, but I've never heard of him. And I honestly think if I brought this up to people that I knew, I was like, hey, have you ever heard about the Vampire King, like in cult fashion? And they would not know what he is. And I really thought it was interesting, and we should bring to light that there are people like this out there. I mean, there's terrible people out there, but there's also great people. You guys are great people, and I care so much about everything that you do. And you should always just come have a conversation with me on Twitter or the Facebook at GSMC_Weird News, or the Facebook is GSMC Weird News, and I will have straight up conversations with you because you guys are amazing people. But I did want to bring to light that this guy is a thing, but at least he's on death row and looking to get executed, which I'm very excited about. Like, I mean, that sounds really terrible, I'm so excited about an execution. But this guy was a horrific man. And this wasn't even that long ago. This was 2004. A lot of these were back in the 70s and the 80s. But this is 2004. And I just wanted to kind of bring to light that this was a thing. And I'm still going to pass up a lot of our other cults that are very similar to this in the way that there's the man who wants to have children with all the women that he calls his wives. If you ever meet a man and he's got 1 million wives and he wants you to be one of them, I would just say stay away. just hightail your butt in the opposite direction, because that guy's gonna have to be a no-go. That's a no from me. Like, for real. Now, this has been a little bit of a heavy segment, and we'll move on to some, all cults are heavy. Let's just put that out there. All of this is pretty terrible. But before I keep just like rambling about this Vampire King guy, I want to move on, take a quick break, take a breather. Everybody take a breather. And we will come back and listen and talk about some different cults that are not like this one.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Hello and welcome back to the GSMC Weird News Podcast. Now, before the break, we were talking about strange and unusual and just weird cults altogether, and we talked about the Vampire King right before the break, and that one was a little heavy, so let's bring it a little to the lighter and different side. Let's head on back over to Japan, to one of the strangest named cults I've ever heard of, and this is the Happy Science cult. It used to be called Happy of Science, but now it's called Happy Science cult. I don't know. Don't ask me. It's a lot. But this started in 1986 by Ryoho Okawa. The pronunciations, you know this. It's going to be bad either way. Who believed he was the human incarnation of a supreme being called El Cantare, C-A-N-T-A-R-E. I don't know. Who combines Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, and every other prophetic deity to create a 9-dimensional heaven with him at the head of it all. What? Like, that's ridiculous. So this guy just used to be a businessman, and then he went from being a businessman to, I'm the human incarnation of the supreme being. It's a lot. So this is actually still ongoing today. And I found it really weird. First off, it's called Happy Science. Like, what? What? I don't know. But this is just weird, and the idea of a 9-dimensional heaven with one guy at the head who's just this guy, I don't know. It's really weird to me. But he also created a complex mythology of, like, New Age nonsense, all while, are you ready for this? All while founding a political wing called the Happiness Realization Party. So not only is this guy running this cult called Happy Science, where he's this being, this all supreme being, he also starts a political wing called the Happiness Realization Party on top of that all. Now, this party, it advocates for some stuff that is a little... What? Like, it's a little strange. I don't know. This whole thing is really strange in general. But, so the Happiness Realization Party advocates, like, a vicious Japanese nationalism devoted to denying historical cruelties. Sorry, my words are getting mixed up. It was only a matter of time before they did. So what? This guy wants to deny, or he wants his political party at least, which I assume is him and him as the supreme being, denying historical cruelties. Like, I don't understand. I just don't understand. But wait, there's more. So, besides denying historical cruelties and advocating for a vicious Japanese nationalism devoted to that, it advocates conflict with China and North Korea and rebuilding Japan's infrastructure. Good God, I'm just losing all my words here. So this guy's got his cult going, and it's obviously going strong because it is actually still going as of today with what they say. It's not an actual recorded number. It's just assumed by them is that they have 12 million members globally. So around the world, they say they have 12 million members. So obviously this is going well. Whatever cult this is, I still don't fully understand it. It just seems like this cult leader really just wanted to be in hard and heavy in the political world, and this is how he did it. I don't know. But they say they've got 12 million members globally, which is just insane. I don't know. I don't know what to say. It's just so weird. He also... this whole thing also has a multimedia arm, and they enjoy the tax exempt status in the U.S. El Cantare, what are you doing over here in Japan? It's a lot. This really does seem to me, at least to me from an outside point looking in, that he was down on his luck, because he was just this businessman, but he was down on his luck, came up as this cult leader, came up with this cult leader persona probably, where he thinks he's, this supreme being, with this 9-dimensional heaven that he's in charge of, so that he could push his political beliefs. That's what it really seems, is it's all political in the end with this guy. Whether I believe with it or not, I just don't get it. I'm also not in Japan, so, well, obviously, but I'm not in Japan, and I don't know Japanese politics, so I can't put my 2 cents in one way or another. But happy science. I don't know. I don't know what's going on over there. I probably should do more research just in general, what's going on all around the world, but I really don't know what's going on over there. You feeling okay, Japan? I'm a little worried about you. That's a theme. I'm worried about dates, years, and I'm worried about Japan right now, because this is kind of ridiculous, and the fact that it's still ongoing is what's mind-blowing to me. It's just another one of those ones that's still ongoing, and you're like, wait, this is a thing? How is this a thing? I just don't understand. But I thought you guys would find this, honestly really interesting, besides the fact that you can tell your friends, hey, so fun fact, there's a cult called Happy Science, but also on top of that, it's just a new fact to know. It's something that I've never heard of. I've never heard of Happy Science and all of its weirdness. But now I know, and now you guys know too, because I feel like this needs to be known that this is a thing, because it's real strange. Real weird, real strange, and oddly political. I don't know. Could not tell you. Oddly political, but also confusing. I don't know. This whole, I guess, sentence of he's the incarnation of a supreme being called El Cantare, who combines Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, and every other prophetic deity to create a 9-dimensional heaven with him at the head. Like, that sentence in general is like, yeah, I gotta sit here for a second and let my brain process. Like, that's what that sentence is to me. And that's kind of why I wanted to share this with you, because it's just, it's something. I mean, these are all something, but this is something indeed. Just food for thought. I mean, like, for real. This is like, it's strange. I mean, these are all strange. That's what you're here for. You're here for the weird. You're here for the strange. You're here for the unusual. And I am dishing it out to you right now. Now, let's take a quick break, and when I come back, we'll talk about some more weird cult stuff.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Hello and welcome back to the GSMC Weird News Podcast. Now, before the break, we were talking strange, unusual, and just all around weird cults. And before this break, we talked about happy science. We talked about happy science. Now, let's move on to, I'm going to butcher this name, I'm telling you now, Nuwambian Nation. The Nuwambian Nation, formerly known as the United Nuwambian Nation of Moors. So this was created by Dwight York. So this whole, we'll call it the nation. So the nation's whole thing is combining Christianity, ancient Egyptian iconography. I can never say that word right. But ancient Egyptian icon stuff. Iconography, I can't say the word, you know what I mean. Also, African rituals and a belief that aliens are coming. So, a wide, broad range of things here, let me tell you. So, the nations believed that 144,000 chosen people will be taken away in a flying city to Orion to prepare for the final fight against Satan. You heard me right. To the stars for the final fight against Satan. I don't know. So this cult is got really popular in rural Georgia. It's kind of a strange place for this to be popular, but so it became like really popular in rural Georgia, where York ended up building a massive compound. Now, after he built the compound in rural Georgia, not in York, Georgia, his name is York. I'm confusing myself here. So after building this compound, his mythology grew, which was now incorporating cloning, racial theory, cosmology, anti-government conspiracies, and linguistics. Real weird mishmash of things that this was doing. First off, this is insane. But I guess it did really get popular. It got really popular and actually still exists today. So it still exists today, even though our friend York is in prison for life. So let me explain. Let's go back a few steps and explain why York is in prison. So the entire time he was building this compound and really like going gung-ho into his, into this cult, really getting it up and going, he was under investigation. Like the entire time he's been under investigation. And he's under investigation and was eventually actually detained for running a massive child trafficking ring that had about 1,000 individuals that were linked to this trafficking ring, or like in some way incorporated into this trafficking ring. And so, like I said, he was sent to prison and he is there for life. This still exists, which is crazy. So he actually was sent to prison in 2002. And after he was sent to prison, the compound was seized and demolished, probably for the better. But there are, like, the group still exists, but the numbers are definitely a lot lower than they were when it was a big thing. This is kind of crazy to me, to take so many different things from different, like, religions and beliefs and cultures and whatnot, and throw them into this one mishmash cult. I don't know. It seems like a lot. Because you've got your Christianity, you've got your ancient Egyptian stuff, and then on top of that, you've got some African rituals thrown in there, and to cream of the crop, top it all off with a cherry, with your aliens that are coming to take only 144,000 chosen ones to Orion to prepare for the final battle against Satan. Yeah. I can't believe that I'm saying something like that. Like, it's ridiculous. When you hear that in a sentence, you're like, wait, what? I don't get it. Like, there are so many different things just mishmashed into one. And surprisingly, it was very popular. I guess it was also popular amongst the hip-hop scene, is what they were saying. I couldn't find much, like, actual evidence about that, but that is what they say. It was popular through that, and then the rural Georgia area, where the compound became a thing. Now this is, I don't know, it's so much in one. It's just so much thrown into one cult. The guy was like, you know what? Let's combine them all. How are there still people that are doing this? Like, I don't get it. But what it seems, I can't tell, and I couldn't find much about the if his massive child trafficking ring actually had anything to do with the cult, or if that was something before, because they said even before it got big and while he was still like building the compound is when he was under investigation for these allegations. And so I don't know if, you know, if it was part of it or not. If it was, good thing they tore the whole place down. Like, that's horrible. If not, I still just don't understand. Like, none of it makes sense. Before I keep rambling, I want to know the weirdest cults that you guys have heard of. If you were in school and you heard about a cult that was really interesting to you, or if you were watching some documentary and it popped up, or just TV and they were talking about it, let me know. Tweet me at GSMC_weird news, or hit me up on the Facebooks at, which is GSMC weird news. Now, I found a lot of really strange cults while I was doing this, and I've looked into a lot of different cults that were really confusing and interesting to me, because I just don't get it because I'm on the outside. Like, that's really what it comes down to, is I'm not on the inside, I'm on the outside, and it's just confounding to me that, you know, these are things. And there are many cults that are actually popping up now there are some that are popping up now and some that are, dying down from then or even still going strong. And I don't know, it's just a very interesting subject, and I thought we'd talk about it this week. And I want to thank you guys so much for listening to me ramble, putting up with my nonsense, listening about cults. I want to hear from you guys. Hit us up on the social medias at GSMC_Weird News. Facebook is GSMC Weird News. Just let's talk. I'm there to talk with you guys. Hit us up. Also, if you, like this podcast, are into other things besides just weird news, the GSMC Podcast Network has some really, really cool podcasts in different subjects. You've got sports, you've got all sorts of things. You've got beauty tips. I'm actually on beauty tips, along with another amazing woman who does it, so if you like to listen to me, you can go to that one. You've got so many options, dating advice, that kind of stuff. Go check out the GSMC Podcast Network, because I promise you there is a podcast for you that's not just this one. Maybe it is just this one, and for that, that's awesome. But I seriously want to thank you guys for listening to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. My name's Colleen, and I'll talk to you in the next one.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.